Hi. So it's February 2020, and this month marks 7 years since the Elisa Lam case. I was watching a bedtime stories episode on this. I think I mentioned bedtime stories before. If you haven't seen that channel, I strongly recommend it. Those guys, they cover all sorts of mysterious, unexplained cases about paranormal sort of situations, unexplained murders, and so on. But they do it in a very professional way with exhaustive research. And I would strongly recommend that channel. I was a little surprised actually that their video on Alyssa Lamb hadn't got more views as their channel goes, because this is a very well known case. And the chances are, if you're clicking on this video, you'll be familiar with the case. But if you're not, just a quick summary of what I'm talking about. So, back in 2013, a young Chinese Canadian woman by the name of Alyssa Lam, only 21 years old, was taking a trip, what she called her West Coast trip. And she was on her way to Santa Cruz. I'm not sure if that's in California or in Mexico, but basically, on her way, she stopped in Los Angeles, and she stopped in a hotel by the name of the Cecil Hotel. Now, this particular venue is notorious for its history of problems, paranormal incidents, suicides, and even murders. It's one of those places that is tied with unfortunate events, and it's even changed its name. Whether this was a deliberate decision because of its notoriety or whether it was just a business takeover, I'm not sure. It's now known as Stay on Main, but it's in a rather rundown part of Los Angeles. It's a budget hotel and it's still operating, which is rather incredible when you think of all the things that have happened there. In fact, there's a Wikipedia list documenting at least 15 or 16 separate incidents connected with this hotel going back to the 1930s. So, um, the strange thing about this case was the circumstances around it. Had it been that this young woman was found dead, which is what happened, it would have been tragic enough. But the fact that there are still to this day unexplained circumstances of the case make this kind of a case that's generated a lot of interest. It became kind of viral at the time online with all sorts of theories coming up online. I actually remember, I believe it was one of my Chinese friends that drew me, pointed out the case. She said, "Have you heard about this girl in Los Angeles?" I've been, what's that about? And I looked it up. And since then, it's really, in a sense, the case has spiraled into a whole urban legend of sorts. There have been songs dedicated to the case. There have been numerous low budget films. Some, in my opinion, they're in slightly bad taste. Some are more sensitively handled. Um, the thing about this is it was not that long ago. We're only talking 7 years. Um, so anyway, the circumstances of this was that 5 days before this young woman's body was found in the water tank or one of the water tanks of this hotel, um, there was a video recording, a CCTV recording from a lift in the hotel. And her behavior in that, her body language is very unusual to say the least. Now, it's known that Alyssa Lam suffered from bipolar disorder, and she had updated her followers on her Tinder account in the weeks leading up to this and sort of documenting her travels. The guys at Bedtime Stories looked at this from certain fresh angles that I hadn't considered before. But anyway, what happened was hotel guests started complaining that they were having water pressure problems and even of blackened water coming through the system. And um, sadly and rather morbidly, it turns out that that was actually her decomposing body in the water tank, one of the water tanks of the hotel. Now, this is where things get strange. It's widely speculated that she couldn't have got up there herself because it was only staff that were permitted to be up there. So if this was suicide, it wouldn't be the most immediate choice. There have been suicides in this hotel before, and they were a more conventional method, people either shooting themselves or jumping off the building. Certainly, as a suicide method, this wouldn't make much sense. Um, it would work, but it would certainly be quite a gruesome way to go for a young woman to actually put herself in a tank. And there's a lot of speculation. How did they get up? How did you get up there? I believe I forget the exact dimensions, but they were something like 8 feet. They were pretty tall. Well, more than that, I think it was 12 foot, in fact. I mean, you could see from the footage at the time of the news reports, grown male firefighters standing next to these things who were pretty tall. So for a young woman to get up there, there would need to be a fixed ladder. Um, Now, it's subsequently been revealed that there may indeed have been a fixed ladder, whereas reports at the time were mixed on this, that there had been no ladder at the site. But even if she got to the top, she would have to get inside the tank and then somehow close it herself, which is no easy feat. And there's nothing to push against. So, if you're standing in a water tank, in order to physically close the lid, you'd need to be standing on something. And this was a petite woman, even a grown man would find that difficult. So it's that automatically raises questions. The other thing that raises a lot of questions is the video footage of um, her on the lift. Now, the guys in Bedtime Stories raised something which I hadn't known before, which was that hotel claimed that she had had difficulties with her roommates. This is a cheap hotel, and she'd been relocated to another room. That's something I didn't realize until today, until I watched their video. If that is true, that raises questions. Now, I have to say, a lot of people don't believe that. A lot of people believe that the authorities are hiding something. But let's say that is true. That to me automatically raises some red flags. It makes me think, well, someone may have had a grudge against this young woman. She may have had a dispute with someone. There may have been something going on. Now, if you look at the footage of the CCTV, I don't even need to put a link because you just type in Elisa Lam video. It's got 25 million views. So this is very well known at this point. Um, there's a lot of debate around the nature of that video. Firstly, there is some argument that the timestamp has been obscured, and there's speculation that the video has been tampered with either by the hotel or by the police, which raises the question why? Why would the police do that? Would it be that it can mean only one of two things. If you're going to say that the police were involved in some sort of cover up, it would mean one of two things. Either they were negligent and they wanted to cover up their own negligence and incompetence, and that would be, suggesting that they were incompetent in the case. I don't think there's necessarily anything to say to suggest that they were, or they were one of their people was involved in it was a cover up, which isn't inconceivable, but it's more likely if we go down that path that it was someone in the hotel. In which case, why would the police want to, why would they want to cover that up? Now, if the police were simply issuing the CCTV footage that they were handed, my question would be why did they not question the hotel staff as to why that timestamp is obscured? If you look at the video, it's blurred out. That raises questions. Why? Why would that be the case? It's almost as if someone's trying to alter that. Some people also speculate that her mouth is kind of pixelated out at several points, almost like they're trying to stop people reading into what she may have been saying. Now, the video is quite unsettling because it just makes no sense. Basically, she gets into the lift, she presses lots of buttons, and her body language would seem to indicate she's playing hide and seek. And actually, the guys at Bedtime Stories pointed that out. And looking at that, I thought, okay, well, yeah, that looks like she's playing hide and seek. She's showing the sort of body language like she's in a kind of playful mood. But the body language towards the end of the video is a bit more strange. I don't think that in any rational sense you can say that her hand gestures towards the end of the video are in any way normal. The hide and seek bit is a bit more like you could sort of imagine, okay, maybe she's a young woman, she's only 21, maybe she's just being playful. there's not much said about what her personality was like, at least not much that I have seen. Um, and her body language would seem to indicate that she's kind of hiding behind. She looks out several times, presumably to see if the person is coming, and then she comes in again, almost slightly annoyed. And this would indicate the body language of someone who's playing that sort of game. But towards the end of the video, when she comes out, she's making this kind of hand gesture, and I'll try and imitate it, not very well, but it's sort of like almost like she's playing with a puppet or something. It's very strange. It definitely isn't normal behavior. And the guys at Bedtime Story suggest that they're convinced that there was someone else there. I'm not sure. There's been a lot of discussion over her mental health and even whether or not she was on drugs, but the autopsy, the pathology report found the only thing that was in her bloodstream was a small, minute amount of alcohol. There was no drugs in her bloodstream. She did have prescription medicine for her bipolar disorder, and she'd taken that on schedule. If she'd had some sort of psychotic episode, I'm no expert on this, but I would have thought one of the hallmarks of that would be behaving in ways that are outside her norm. So, for example, not taking her medication. But she did take her medication, which would indicate for her it's her normal routine. So clearly there is something unexplained about this video, and that is where the questions arise. Is she talking to someone else? Is she gesturing to someone else? We obviously can't see them. Is it someone from the hotel staff that maybe was paying unwanted advances? Is it another guest? There are a lot of unanswered questions about this. Clearly, no one's come forward. And why would they? If they were the person that was maybe coming on to her, they're not going to admit that. And in the worst case scenario, if this was a case of someone in the hotel murdered this young woman and covered it up, they're obviously not going to come forward. That would, even if they were to confess, it's 7 years on now. So it's clearly something that they felt the need to, whether they don't have enough of a guilty conscience or what. But even if you take the most natural, for want of a better word, hypothesis with this, which is that, okay, in the video she's playing some sort of hide and seek and she's just annoyed by the person messing her around. She went up herself, and a subsequent report, actually from November last year, as reported by the Daily Mail, indicates that a police dog actually did detect her scent on a stairwell. One of the things at the time was there was no way that guests could get up there. Well, that actually has been called into question because apparently older footage has emerged of teenage boys messing around on the roof. Now, if they could get up there, maybe it's not as secure as is first believed. Okay, so she gets up to the roof. If there's a fixed ladder on the cistern on the water tank, then it is possible for her to get to the top. Then it's speculated maybe the shutter of these tanks were not as heavy as speculated, and whilst it would be a struggle, she could lift them. Okay, so that is the most natural kind of conclusion. But even that, it's hard to see that as a normal thing. I mean, she was found naked, by the way. If she had some sort of psychosis and she didn't realize this was a water tank, why would she have taken her clothes off? Question one. Why would she if she was suicidal, why this method? I mean, I'm always a little suspicious when people say this person wasn't suicidal. There's no way to really know that because mental health is not something that's very easy to detect. Someone can be outwardly happy, but, suffering inside. So that isn't necessarily, I'm not sure who came up with the conclusion that she wasn't suicidal. That's, I mean, I actually thought of something, and this is kind of a somewhat a theory of my own. Let's say she was engaged in some sort of hide and seek, just messing around with fellow guests. Now, let's say that she kind of formed some sort of friendship. Let's say in this friendship, someone had let her down. She was traveling by herself. Let's say she was prone to, I mean, apparently she had the confidence to travel alone in the first place. I imagine her parents would have been a bit wary of that. But she was legally an adult, so there was nothing, there's no negligence on their part. She was legally an adult, but I've sort of imagined a situation. Let's say she had bipolar disorder. Let's say she took a personal letdown really to heart and it really, really depressed her. That would be enough maybe to send someone over the edge. But there's still questions that remain unanswered. If she was suicidal at that location, it wasn't meant to be her final destination. It's not like she was going to Los Angeles and that was where she was going to stop. She was going on to Santa Cruz, apparently. So that would kind of call into question that she was going there to die. Um, Definitely, the circumstances of that lift video will they'll probably never be answered, which is tragic. And it's just sad to think this young woman, clearly something happened in the time between that video and her being found dead. I mean, it must have been horrendous for the people who, apparently a British couple tasted the water, and they felt it was off. And I guess when they found out what it actually was, I would be, I'd never want to drink again. There's also an issue of life imitating art with this. So it's a film by the name of Dark Water, a Japanese film about a mother and her daughter who move into a rundown apartment, and something very similar happens. It was remade in the United States in 2005. There was even reports that there was a TB outbreak in the vicinity. This is a rundown part of Los Angeles. There was a TB outbreak in the facility around the vicinity, and the medical aid kit that was used for the patients had none other than the initials Elisa Lam. Now that to me is just weird. It may be pure coincidence, but it is still very strange. There has been one death since this case. Many people may not realize this. A 28-year-old man who was found dead is thought to be suicide, but his circumstances apparently a lot less mysterious than this. But it goes to show this is a hotel that really has a history. I can't believe they're still operating. It's tragic for her family. I mean, there's been films out of this, there's been songs, but let's not forget this was a real person. Just less than 10 years ago, she was just going about her life on social media, traveling, engaging with friends, and to think that she's now become a kind of almost like folk figure in mythology, it's a very strange thought. It's a very strange thought. I think the case is profoundly sad, but undeniably interesting as well, because unexplained things are always interesting. It's that side of human nature where we just think, she was one of us. She was just an innocent young woman. What happened to her? And it's so sad, but I don't want to be too religious here, but if there's a heaven, I always think, will we know, will all these unexplained things, will there finally be an answer up there, for want of a better term? What happened to her? What happened to this young woman? We know she was found dead in a water tank. We know that her behavior in the video is quite strange. Now that they've put that angle of hide and seek on it, I think that starts to make more sense. But that still doesn't explain her body language towards the end of the video, which is this whole thing with her hand. It just, that to me is very strange. People have even suggested that she was possessed, which is certainly unnerving. What do you think? You live in Los Angeles. Are you familiar with the hotel? Do you know something about the case that I haven't mentioned? I'd like to know people's thoughts on this. Anyone else out there, have you got any theories? I mean, suffice to say, no matter what theories come out, it won't bring this young woman back, but it's just a mystery of the unknown, and may she rest in peace.